welcome to this Beyond Shakespeare exploring session. Today we are continuing our first look at The Woman's Prize, or The Tamer Tamed, by John Fletcher, written sometime between 1604 and about 1610, possibly as late as 1617. Anybody's guess, really. It will be starting from Act 3, Scene 3. This is a first look, so there will be pauses for discussion between scenes. But to read this play, we have assembled a wonderful team of readers, and just pulling up their most excellent and euphonious names. As Petruchio and Bianca, we have...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm very scared.
Well, often a little caution is a good self-preservation strategy. As Sophocles and watch number 1, we have...
Scott, based in Suffolk.
As Mariah, Pedro, and Moroso, we have...
Me, Rachael, actor on the East Coast, currently eating pancakes.
God, I wish I had some pancakes. As Tranio, Jaques, and watch number 2, we have...
Hello, my name is Lynn Freitas, and I am also in the U.S. along with Rachael, except on the exact opposite coast.
Yes, so we have both coasts covered, and I find that very comforting. As Roland and Petronius, we have...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Romford.
Marvelous. And as Livia and the Doctor, we have...
My name is Alexandra, and I am elated to have been described as euphonious.
No one would dispute the description, and I am your host, Liza Graham. I will be reading the stage directions. The story so far is that Petruchio, who has a reputation as a tamer of unruly women, at the beginning of the play, he is married for the second time. His first wife, whom he famously quote-unquote tamed, is deceased. He marries Mariah. Her friend Bianca counsels her that unless she puts up a fight, he's going to walk all over her. There follows a scene where instead of coming willingly to bed on the wedding night, she fortifies herself in her chamber and starts throwing chamber pots at anyone who comes up. She and Bianca, who's the commander-in-chief, recruit other women to come upstairs with them, so that they've got the entire upper level fortified and defended, and they defy men, and they defy male control, and even her father, invoking her duty, cannot induce her to play the willing wife. Meanwhile, Mariah's younger sister, Livia, their father, Petronius, wants Livia to marry the elderly and unappealing Moroso, not that he's unappealing because he's elderly. He's unappealing just, because that's the kind of guy he is, and this is a comedy, and there always has to be an unappealing suitor, and she really wants to marry a nice young man named Roland. In order to get out of the marriage with Moroso, Livia joins the revolt of women upstairs. Moroso, but to do that, she also gives some rather feisty words to young Roland, who now believes that he's been scorned by her and has resolved never to love again and to be an enemy to all women. Anyway, the siege upstairs has recently ended. Mariah has offered terms which include that she must have control over her own finances, her own comings and goings, her own company, her own house, and that she must not be questioned in any of these. And Petruchio has agreed and signed the treaty, so she has come down. They have spent the night in the same bedroom, but has anything fun happened in that bedroom? Fun for either party? We're about to find out. And it remains to be said that even in this first scene, I can see content warnings for sexual violence, lots of misogyny, obviously. It's the early modern era, but this is also a play about gender and marital relations, so the misogyny may be especially obvious. There's the first scene, just like reading down the first scene, there's also a content warning for racism. So, yay, early modern era. And so it's the morning after the night before. Petruchio and his friend Sophocles are entering, talking about what may or may not have happened last night. And in your own time, Sophocles and Petruchio.
Let you touch her all this night?
Not touch her.
Where was your courage?
Where was her obedience? Never poor man was shamed so. Never rascal that keeps a stud of whores was used so basely.
Will you tell me one thing truly? Do you love her?
I would I did not. Upon that condition, I passed thee half my land.
It may be then. Her modesty required a little violence. Some women love to struggle.
She had it, and so much that I sweat for it, so I did, but to no end. I washed in Ethiop. She swore my force might weary her, but win her never I could, nor should till she consented, and I might take her body prisoner, but for her mind or appetite.
'Tis strange. This woman is the first I ever read of, refused a warranted occasion, and standing on so fair terms.
I shall quit her.
You shew no more art.
Yes, I swore to her, and by no little ones, if presently without more disputation on the matter, she grew not nearer to me and dispatched me out of the pain I was, for I was nettled, and willingly and eagerly and sweetly I would to her chambermaid, and in her hearing begin her in such a hunsup.
Then she started?
No more than I do now. Marry, she answered, if I were so disposed, she could not help it. But there was one called Jaques, a poor butler, one that might well content a single.
And he should tilt her?
To that sense, and last she bade me these 6 nights look for nothing nor strive to purchase it, but fair good night and so good morrow, and a kiss or two to close my stomach, for her vow had sealed it, and she would keep it constant.
Stay ye. Was she thus when you wooed her?
Nothing, Sophocles. More keenly eager, I was oft afraid she had been light and easy, she would shower her kisses so upon me.
Then I fear another spoke in the wheel.
Now thou hast found me, there gnaws my devil, Sophocles. Oh, patience preserve me, that I make her not example by some unworthy way, as fleeing her, boiling, or making verges, drying her.
I hear her.
Mark her then, and see the air of spite and prodigality. She has studied a way to beggars both, and by this hand she shall be, if I live, a doxy.
Enter Maria at the door, and servant and woman.
Oh, fie, sir.
I do not like that dressing. 'Tis too poor. Let me have 6 gold laces, broad and massy, and betwixt every lace a rich embroidery. Line the gown through with plush perfumed, and purfle all the sleeves down with pearl.
What think you, Sophocles? In what point stands my state now?
For those hangings, let 'em be carried where I gave appointment. They are too base for my use, and bespeak new pieces of the civil wars of France. Let 'em be large and lively, and all silk work, the borders gold.
I marry, sir. This cuts it.
That 14 yards of satin give my woman. I do not like the color, 'tis too civil. There's too much silk in the lace, too. Tell the Dutchman that brought the mares he must with all speed send me another suit of horses, and by all means 10 cast of hawks for the river. I much care not what price they bear, so they be sound and flying. For the next winter, I am for the country, and mean to take my pleasure. Where's the horseman?
She means to ride a great horse.
With a side saddle?
Yes, and she'll run a tilt within this 12-month.
Tomorrow I'll begin to learn, but pray, sir, have a great care to be an easy doer. 'Twill spoil a scholar else.
An easy doer? Did you hear that?
Yes, I shall meet her morals ere be long, I fear not.
Oh, good morrow.
Good morrow, lady. How is't now?
Faith sickly, this house stands in an ill air.
Yet more charges?
Subject to rots and rooms. Out on't, 'tis nothing but a tilled fog.
What think you of the lodge, then?
I like the seat, but 'tis too little. Sophocles, let me have thy opinion. Thou hast judgment.
'Tis very well.
What if I pluck it down and build a square upon it with 2 courts still rising from the entrance?
And in the midst, a college for young scolds.
And to the southward take in a garden of some 20 acres and cast it of the Italian fashion, hanging.
And you could cost yourself so too. Pray, lady, will not this cost much money?
Some 5,000, say 6. I'll have it battled too.
And guilt, Mariah, this is a fearful course you take. Pray, think on it. You are a woman now, a wife, and that must in honesty and justice look for some due obedience from you.
That bare word shall cost you many a pound more built upon't. Tell me of due obedience. What's a husband? What are we married for? To carry sumpters? Are we not one piece with you, and as worthy our own intentions as you yours?
Pray, hear me.
Take 2 small drops of water equal weighed. Tell me which is the heaviest and which ought first to descend in duty.
You mistake me. I urge not service from you, nor obedience in way of duty, but of love and credit. All I expect is but a noble care of what I have brought you, and of what I am, and what our name may be.
That's in my making.
'Tis true, 'tis so.
Yes, it is, Petruchio, for there was never man without our molding, without our stamp upon him and our justice, left anything 3 ages after him good, and his own.
Good lady, understand him.
I do too much, sweet Sophocles. He's one of our most spiteful self-condition, never at peace with anything but age, that has no teeth left to return his anger. A bravery dwells in his blood yet, of abusing his first good wife. He's sooner fire than powder, and sooner mischief.
If I be so sudden, do you not fear me?
No, nor yet care for you. And if it may be lawful, I defy you.
Does this become you now?
It shall become me.
Now, disobedient, weak, vainglorious woman, if I were but half so willful as thou spiteful, I should now drag thee to thy duty.
Drag me.
But I am friends again. Take all your pleasure.
Now you perceive him, Sophocles.
I love thee above thy vanity, thou faithless creature.
Would I had been so happy when I married, but to have met an honest man like thee. For I am sure thou art good. I know thou art honest, a handsome, hurtless man, a loving man, though never a penny with him. And those eyes, that face, and that true heart. Wear this for my sake, and when thou think'st upon me, pity me. I am cast away.
Exit Mariah.
Why, how now, man?
You'll leave me and follow your advices.
Man's jealous.
I shall find a time ere it be long to ask you 1 or 2 foolish questions.
I shall answer, as well as I am able when you call me. If she mean true, 'tis but a little killing. And if I do not venture, it's farewell, sir.
Pray farewell. Is there no keeping a wife to one man's use? No wintering these cattle without straying? 'Tis hard dealing, very hard dealing. Gentlemen, strange dealing. Now in the name of madness, what star reigned? What dog star, bull, or bear star when I married this second wife, this whirlwind that takes all within her compass? Was I not well warned? I thought I had, and I believe I know it, and beaten to repentance in the days of my first doting. Had I not wife enough to turn my love to? Did I want vexation, or any special care to kill my heart? Had I not every morning a rare breakfast mixed with a learned lecture of ill language, louder than Tom Lincoln, and at dinner a diet of the same dish? Was there evening that e'er passed over us without thou knave or thou whore for digestion? Had I ever pulled this same poor sport men run mad for, but like a cur I was fain to shew my teeth first, and almost worry her. And did heaven forgive me and take the serpent from me? And am I keeping tame devils now again? My heart aches. Something I must do speedily. I'll die if I can handsomely. That's the way to make a rascal of her. I'm sick, and I'll go very near it, but I'll perish.
Exit Petruchio. So, what do we now make of this scene? Having
There's a lot.
Lynn.
Yeah. Yeah. That first part. That's icky. That's rapey and not cool. So yeah, a lot. So yeah, the couple of different movements in this scene. So a lot to sort of chew on. So yeah, I think in a modern production, that first part, it just goes as far as I'm concerned. And the game that Maria is playing here, it's just like she's spending all his money, or she's maybe pretending to. But I think that we are supposed to understand this as really inappropriately lavish spending for just a landed gentleman. I mean, he's not a titled, he's not a duke or an earl or anything like that. And all of this stuff is really luxury goods. So, she's going to break the bank. She's going to impoverish him. I think that's supposed to be the threat, but I think it's an empty threat. And then she pretends to flirt with him. That she does. It's like she pretends that he's somebody else, and then oh, it's too bad I'm already married. If I'd met someone like you before I got married, I would have married you, even though you're poor. What?
She might be doing that. I wondered if she was saying that to Sophocles.
I wonder.
In order to make Petruchio jealous. Alexandra, I saw a hand, and then Alan.
Yeah, I read that as being to Sophocles as well, and then as soon as she's gone, Petruchio is sort of going, right, you and I need to have some words, which prompts Sophocles to go, oh, good God, the man's jealous, but my friend, what even? I was going to say, yes, I think there's something very interesting going on with, as Lynn observed, some of this text is very icky. But on the other hand, what we are getting to understand, both from what Petruchio is recounting and also in his interaction with Maria, is that there seem to be sort of implications or threats or suggestions or from other people of very, very bad things. But what has actually happened is he's spent this entire time morosely respecting her choices about her own body and about the contract that they made earlier in the play, whereby she now has charge of the money. He's not happy what she's doing with it, but he is still respecting her decisions. And they, what I found very interesting is those sort of interactions where she seems to be countering with equal force whatever he's spoken about. So in terms of overnight, he's essentially threatened rape. He's threatened to go off and have it with someone, have it off with someone else, and she's basically said, well, I can do the same. And yes, there's another interaction when they're speaking to each other directly that is also very much from an equal standpoint. And then she says this extraordinary, when he mentions obedience, she says this extraordinary line of, take 2 drops of water that are equally weighed and tell me which one's heavier and which one should descend in duty. Which again is amazingly egalitarian considering the context. So yes, I'm finding it interesting that where this play could have gone very much in the opposite direction, it's choosing to hint towards all the bad things that could be going on, but actually not have them happening.
Yeah, and I think he's I read from the exchange at the beginning of the scene with Sophocles, which everyone is, I think, rightly flagging up as quite icky, that Sophocles is saying, well, maybe you should have been violent with her, maybe that's what she wanted, and Petruchio says, I was violent, and she won anyway, saying, what is it, my violence might weary her, but win her I never should.
But that was her response.
Yeah.
So the idea that, I think the way she phrases it is that, he might win her body, but he'll never win her respect. Which again is these are the sort of lines that we as a modern audience kind of, and especially in the post-Me Too era, hear in a very different way. But I think that's one of the things that makes the play relevant.
Yeah, for sure. It's the game of expectation. Eric?
Yeah, and also
no,
the end of the sort of final monologue, soliloquy, whatever you want to call it, is just like, yes, no, wintering these cattle without straying. And it's like, oh God, am I really saying this? And then keeping tame devils now again and take the serpent from me and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go disappear now.
Yes.
I have this
Alan,
thing.
I ought to have called on you earlier. Sorry to have skipped you.
Yeah, no, I must admit, I kept looking for an exit line somewhere for Sophocles, because I think during that, once Mariah's come on stage, I think he's trying every bloody door and finding them all blocked. And then she starts flirting outrageously with him.
Rachael?
No, I think the flirting with him is not genuine at all. It's just purposeful in front of her husband. I think any which way, that it's just I think also there's a lot of revenge spending going on, that anything he says to her that's sexist, she ups the price of what she's going to spend, how lavishly. I think there is a lot that they show in her extravagance for us to judge her over, but I think maybe the way that even we're thinking it's extreme, maybe it would be a different time and a different audience, but that first part with Sophocles and Petruchio, maybe even an audience at that time would be like, those are extreme measures. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's, again, it's the game of expectation, and it's the sort of play that the audience would be arguing about during the act breaks. And it's the Tancred and Gismond problem, where if you in theory owe someone duty and obedience, but obeying them would actually put you in danger, do you still owe them? Or if they don't carry through with their duty towards you, do you still owe them duty? Elizabeth?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting the way Mariah kind of comes to the fore here. Like, the Sophocles and Petruchio argument with the violence, kind of brings out a bit more of Maria's argument and makes you want to side with her. She says, are we not pleased with you, and as worthy our own intentions as you yours? And I thought this was a very modern sensibility. I think the kind of arguments that they're having in the text echo arguments that we're having socially now. And I think it would be just another positive reason to sort of stage this play. And I think it doesn't, I remember it was Sarah who was saying she just had never seen a production of the Duck play that didn't make her feel really violently ill. And I think that this one, because Maria speaks back to Petruchio and to Sophocles, it doesn't quite evoke that same sort of nasty feeling as Taming of a Shrew.
Yeah, Lynn, then Alexandra, then Rachael, and possibly Eric also. Everyone. But Lynn,
Yeah.
Lynn first.
Elizabeth has a good point that one of the sort of dramaturgical functions of that exchange at the beginning of this scene is to put us on the opposite side, so that when Maria comes in and she's basically torturing Petruchio, he's signed the contract, he's agreed to her terms, and she's still being really mean to him.
Yep.
You know, she's overspending his money, she's holding out on him erotically, she's flirting with, it's like, why is she still being so mean to him? And I think that maybe part of that Petruchio and Sophocles scene, what it could do is it makes us dislike Petruchio enough to make us feel that maybe he still kind of deserves it. But I'm a little off put by the whole thing, and it's just sort of, it's also just kind of sad, even if Maria has basically an end in mind that's healthy and sustainable. It's just like she you know, she's turning the tables on him. She's kind of trying to break this horse. It's just unfortunate they can't just talk about it. They can't, but she has to manipulate him instead of just having a frank discussion about what she expects their relationship to look like. It's actually still pretty uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And part of the game, I think, is where the audience's sympathies lie. What I think is happening is that Maria is testing Petruchio's adherence to the terms of the treaty he signed. And she's coming on stage going, haha, I'm going to spend your whole fortune on fancy clothes and horses and hawks.
Testing someone you love is not particularly healthy behavior, though. It's still sort of sad.
You're right that it's not. However, it is common in these sorts of plays, and usually it's the man who tests the woman's virtue and fidelity by making her unhappy deliberately to see how she reacts. And it's so in an early modern play, it's kind of a relief to see a woman revisiting that on a man. But enough from me. Alexandra.
Yes, I think what the play is doing, and the reason why it's eliciting such a strong response from us, is twofold. One is it's reversing what we are accustomed to seeing in plays in terms of agency. We are used to seeing the wife have no agency and no choice in her life, and instead, in this particular case, she's taking away. She's not. I mean, not without his consent, but she's taking away his agency, her husband's agency. And I think where the play is actively pushing us to both sympathize and antipathize with both of the characters when they are being the abuser, by making us feel sympathetic towards the other character when they are the abused or the person at risk of abuse. Because yes, I think as an audience, as you said, Liza, we'd be sitting in the aisles in the interval, going, this person really deserves that, and this other person really deserves that, and that's how wars are started. Eye for an eye for an eye for an eye, and always escalating, which is I guess, supposed to be the comedy here, but it's also the tragic aspect is that, as Lynn said, if people just communicated, if people were to just sit down and have a chat and set their boundaries and set their, express their expectations in words, none of this terrible stuff would have happened, and we wouldn't have paid money to see this play.
But it's
I think all of those things are the things that make it relevant for us as a modern audience as well. So it's got the things that get us irritated or kind of emotionally invested are the things that actually give it value.
yes. And let's see. Then Rachael, then Eric. Rachael.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, what Elizabeth said, it made me think of like social contracts, and like the things that Mariah is saying is sort of this type of talk where there's an ask for a revision to, like, the social relationships that we engage in. Yeah, I don't know, that it's just an asking for greater equity and between people, and yeah, just that.
Yes, Eric.
Yeah, I was just going to point out that basically she's kind of already tamed him, because he kind of tamed anyway. Because as soon as he starts angry and violent, sort of, if I'm so sudden, do you not fear me? I'm going to hit you over the head, kind of thing. You kind of see her. No, I don't care for you, and I defy you. And oh, does this become you now? And then as soon as he starts swearing, and I shall drag you to thy duty, and she goes, oh, drag me? Is that what we talked about? And then he goes, but we're friends again. I'm just gonna play nice. Yeah, it's like this push me, pull you kind of thing, which is very interesting and also very realistic in some ways.
Yeah, I think you're right to point that out, and that it's the kind of dynamic it's a game that only works if violence is off the table. There's a popular ballad, which I think even predates A Shrew, a little bit earlier, called "A Shrewd and Cursed Wife Wrapped in Morel's Skin." Morel being the name of a horse, and basically it's a man marries a shrewish wife, and oh no, she's really loud and bad tempered. So he kills his horse and skins the horse and wraps her in the horse's skin and beats her with a stick, and until she's very sorry, and is thenceforward obedient. So to look at the taming of A Shrew and other plays on the same theme, I think, now I don't exactly recall the taming of A Shrew, but I think I'm right in saying that physical violence isn't part of that play necessarily. Is it? Lynn.
Isn't there a scene where Fernando, or whatever his name is, beats his servants?
Oh, yes.
And I think that's an indirect threat. It's like, if I can do it to them, you could be next. So the threat of coercion, I think, is there. It's
a threat, yeah. It's a threat of coercion, a threat of quote unquote dominance. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. So in this play, at least, the implication earlier is that Petruchio's first wife died because he wore her down. And I mean, that's what Bianca seems to think anyway. So the stakes may literally be life and death. It will certainly be the entire future for Mariah, and I think she does something very smart by firstly taking the initiative by removing herself from proximity and fortifying herself somewhere she can't be touched until she gets him to sign up to the terms, which now he has to obey. Eric.
Well, it's not the only types of plays that are kind of laced with violence and sort of comedy violence, where you've got the sort of, I mean, in a man-wife context, you've got John, Sir John, and Tib, which is this play. I think it was just the three of us reading this play overnight or something, which was this thing about priests, lecherous priests and their habits, basically. Yeah, it starts off with this prologue by, I remember this because I read it, this prologue by the husband, John, going, oh, yes, I'm going to go home and, abuse my wife and be so chipper and cheery, until she makes me dinner. And then, of course, what happens is we actually meet his wife, and it's the opposite because she's the one beating him up, like you do in these kind of plays. But yeah, it's just sort of interesting how the expectation is that in order to have a balanced relationship, one of the two has to abuse the other.
Yeah, and Alexandra.
No, I was just indicating you were muted.
Yes. Let's see. Now, do we have more thoughts before we carry on? Excellent. Well, next scene, Act 3, Scene 4, enter Livia, Bianca, Tranio, and Rowland. Take it away in your own time.
Then I must be content, sir, with my fortune.
And I with mine.
I did not think a look or a poor word or two could have displanted such a fixed constancy, and for your end, too.
Come. I know your courses. There's your gewgaws, your rings and bracelets, and the purse you gave me. The money spent in entertaining you at plays and cherry gardens.
There's your chain, too. But if you give me leave, I'll wear the hair still. I would still remember you.
Sorry.
Livia?
Give him his love wench. The young man has employment for him.
Fie, Roland.
You cannot fie me out £100 with this poor plot. Yet, let me ne'er see day more if something do not struggle strangely in me.
Young man, let me talk with you.
Well, young woman.
This was your mistress once.
Yes.
Are you honest? I see you are young and handsome.
I am honest.
Why, that's well said, and there's no doubt your judgment is good enough and strong enough to tell you who are your foes and friends. Why did you leave her?
She made a puppy of me.
Be that granted, she must do so sometimes, and oftentimes love were too serious else.
A witty woman.
Had you loved me,
I would I had.
and dearly, and I had loved you so, you made love worse, sir, but that is not material.
I shall loose.
Sometime or other, for variety, I should have called you fool or boy, or bid you play with the pages, but have loved you still out of all question, and extremely too. You are a man made to be loved.
This woman either abuses me or loves me deadly.
I'll tell you one thing. If I were to choose a husband to mine own mind, I should think one of your mother's making would content me. For on my conscience, she makes good ones.
Lady, I'll leave you to your commendations. I am in again. The devil take their tongues.
You shall not go.
I will, yet thus far, Livia, your sorrow may induce me to forgive you, but never love again. If I stay longer, I have lost £200.
Good sir, but thus much.
Turn if thou beest a man.
But one kiss of you, one parting kiss, and I am gone too.
Come, I shall kiss £50 away at this clap. We'll have one more, and then farewell.
Farewell.
Well, go thy ways, thou bearest the kind heart with thee.
He has made a stand.
A noble, brave young fellow, worthy a wench indeed.
I will. I will not.
Excellent, Roland.
He's gone, but shot again. Play you but your part, and I will keep my promise. 40 angels in fair gold, lady. Wipe your eyes. He's yours if I have any wit.
I'll pay the forfeit.
Then, let's see your sister how she fares now after her skirmish, and be sure Moroso be kept in good hand. Then it's all perfect, Livia.
Exit. Whoa, the plot thickens. So last play we saw that Roland, having received maybe 3 lines of harshness from Livia, Roland decided that she had spurned him forever, and he would never love again, and he hated all women. And Tranio, who knew how things really were, who knew that Livia had only appeared to spurn him because Moroso was listening, Tranio has followed Roland and has said that he will try to get them back together, but there's also a bet. Tranio has bet Roland that he'll get back together with Livia. Roland has said, no, never, take 100 million pounds, I will never love that woman again. So that's the setup to this, but whoa, Bianca's a bit of a loose cannon, isn't she? Thoughts from the room? Alexandra.
I just love that in those last 3 lines, you completely reverse our understanding of what's just happened. So if as an audience we're going, is Bianca just throwing herself at this young man under pretense of wanting to put him back together with his old girlfriend? No, there's a plot between everyone in the room except for Roland to get Roland back with Livia. And that's just, I find that fantastic.
Oh my god.
So-
yes, thank you for pointing that out. That's a wonderful sort of teen rom-com subplot.
Yeah.
Lynn.
So is Bianca flirting with Roland to make Livia jealous?
Alexandra, what do you think?
No, I think she's been saying, I can't remember exactly how she phrased it, but she's basically under guise of having a quick word about does he really still love Livia, or would he be interested in other women? She's essentially setting him up to go back to her. But I don't. Yeah, my understanding. This may just be my understanding, but my understanding of the last 3 lines is that they've all 3 been in cahoots. Roland is the only one who's clueless as to this, and so Bianca's been flirting with him in agreement with Livia.
Okay.
I think this may be, and I kind of love that idea because I think Alexandra, I think you may be right, and I think that Bianca, in the dramatis personae, she's listed as commander-in-chief of the women, and I think she knows she's perceived as scary. I think that her flirting with Roland, I think she does that in the consciousness that she's kind of a weapon in this. Eric.
Yeah, I think it's also. I was trying to work out why on earth she's doing this because, okay, flirting is, for my conscience, she makes good ones. Yay. Okay, that was like a bit creepy. But I think it's kind of also the this is the other type of woman that is out there, sort of the stereotype of an aggressively sexually desiring woman. I don't know what the right phrase is, but like sort of someone who actually goes out to get what she wants, as opposed to Livia, who has been pursued by Roland presumably, and that terrifies the shit out of it. Something like that.
Sorry, really quickly, I found the lines that I was looking for. So just as he's going, she says, "Well, go thy ways, thou bear'st a kind heart with thee, a noble brave young fellow, worthy the wench indeed."
Yes, so it implies that she's glad that he held out against her. And Rachael?
I was no, I wasn't gonna say anything, but I was just laughing because it makes me think of that Spice Girls song, "If you want to be my lover, you got to get with my friends," and it sounds like he's got Bianca's approval.
Yes, and I think, in fact, if this play were staged, maybe an early music version of "Wannabe" would be perhaps the ideal soundtrack. In fact, maybe that whole album. I think the ironic two become one would be ideal for the non-wedding night. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just thinking it was really funny that you guys said that, because that was the first CD I ever got. And it has like a wedding band on the cover. It has a wedding band, so it's like it's kind of giving you so it's kind of adding more towards the kind of conflicts and ideas around marriage. I just thought it was just such a large contrast between the last time we saw Roland and this time we see him, because he was like really forlorn and really like sick with love, and now he's just like, give me back my chain, give me back my hair, give me back, and it's just a big contrast. And I think either he's not being truthful or he wasn't really in love with Livia to start with. I think it's Livia. Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem to be the sort of classic breakup trope of returning their gifts, but saying that I think Livia says he's given her a lock of his hair because, young men with flowing locks is kind of a thing. So he gave her a lock of his hair and she said, well, I'd like to keep this. It doesn't have a monetary value, so it isn't dishonorable to keep it. It is dishonorable to keep valuable gifts that your lover has given you if you then break up with them by these lights. Any more thoughts? Thoughts. And now I have Spice Girls songs running through my head, so thanks.
Thanks for that.
Act 3, Scene 5, enter Jaques and Pedro, a couple of witty servants.
Oh, Jaques. Oh, Jaques. What's become of us? Oh, my sweet master.
Run for a physician and a whole peck of apothecaries, Pedro. He will die, diddle die, if they come not quickly. And bring all people that are skillful in lungs and livers. Raise the neighbors and all the aqua vitae bottles extant. And the parson, Pedro, the parson, a little of his comfort, never so little. 20 to 1 you will find him at the bush. There's the best ale.
Fly.
Exit Pedro. Enter Mariah and servants.
Out with the trunks, ho. Why are you idle? Sirrah, up to the chamber, and take the hangings down, and see the linen packed up and sent away within this half hour. What? Are the carts come yet? Some honest body help down the chests of plate, and some the wardrobe. Alas, we are undone else.
Pray forsooth, and I beseech ye tell me, is he dead yet?
No, but is drawing on. Out with the armor.
Then I'll go see him.
Thou art undone then, fellow. No man that has been near him come near me.
Ooh, quarantine rules. Enter Sophocles and Petronius.
Why, how now, lady? What means this?
Now, daughter, how does my son?
Save all you can, for heaven's sake.
Enter Livia, Bianca, and Tranio.
Be of good comfort, sister.
Oh, my casket.
How does thy husband, woman?
Get you gone, if you mean to save your lives. The sickness.
Stand further off, I prithee.
Is in the house, sir. My husband has it now. Alas, he is infected and raves extremely. Give me some counsel, friends.
Why, lock up the doors and send a woman in to attend him.
I have bespoke 2 women, and the city hath sent a watch by this time. Meat nor money he shall not want, nor prayers.
How long is it since it first took him?
But within this 3 hours.
Enter Watch.
I am frighted from my wits. Oh, here's the watch. Pray, do your office. Lock the doors up, friends, and patience be his angel.
An idiot. This comes unlooked for.
I'll to the lodge. Some that are kind and love me, I know will visit me.
Do you hear my masters? Ho, that you lock the doors up.
'Tis his voice.
Hold and let's hear him.
Will you start me here? Am I a traitor or a heretic, or am I grown infectious?
Pray, sir, pray.
I am well as you are, goodman puppy.
Pray have patience. You shall want nothing, sir.
I want a cudgel and thee, thou wickedness.
He speaks well enough.
Had ever a strong heart, sir.
Will ye hear me? First be pleased to think I know ye all, and can distinguish every man's several voice. You that spoke first, I know my father-in-law, the other Tranio, and I heard Sophocles the last. Pray mark me as my damned wife Maria. If any man misdoubt me for infected, there is mine arm. Any man look on it.
Enter doctor and apothecary.
Save you, a gentleman.
Oh, welcome, doctor. Ye come in happy time. Pray your opinion. What think you of his pulse?
It beats with busiest and shows a general inflammation, which is the symptom of a pestilent fever. Take 20 ounces from him.
Take a fool, take an ounce from mine arm, and Dr. uses. I'll make it close to him to velvet custard. Gentlemen, dost you make a May game on me? I'll tell you once again, I'm as sound, as well, as wholesome, and as sensible as any of you. Let me out quickly, or as I am a man, I'll beat the walls down, and the first thing I light upon shall pay for it.
Exit doctor and apothecary.
Nay, we'll go with you, doctor.
'Tis the safest. I saw the tokens, sir.
Then there is but one way.
Will it please you open?
His fit grows stronger still.
Let's save ourselves, sir. He's past all worldly cure.
Friends, do your office, and what he wants. If money, love, or labour, or any way may win it, let him have it. Farewell, and pray, my honest friends.
Exeunt all but Petruchio and the watch.
Why, rascals, friends, gentlemen, thou beastly wife, Jaques. None hear me? Who at the door there?
Think I pray, sir, whether you are going, and prepare yourself.
These idle thoughts disturb you. The good gentlewoman, your wife, has taken care you shall want nothing.
Shall I come out in quiet? Answer me, or I shall charter a fowling piece and make mine own way. 2 of ye I cannot miss. If I miss 3, come here to assault me. I'm as excellent as well. I thank heaven for it, and have as good a stomach at this instant.
That's an ill sign.
He draws on. He's a dead man.
And sleep as soundly. Will he look upon me?
You want pen and ink? Well, your sense, sir. Settle your state.
Sirs, I'm well as you are, or any rascal living.
Would you were, sir?
Look to yourselves, and if you love your lives, open the door and fly me, for I shoot else. I'll shoot and presently chain bullets. And under 4, I will not kill.
Let's quit him. Maybe it's a trick. He's dangerous.
The devil take the hindmost, I cry.
Exit the watchman running. Enter Petruchio with a gun.
Have among ye, the door shall open too. I'll have a fair shoot. Are you all gone? Tricks in my old days, crackers put now upon me, and by Lady Greensleeves, am I grown so tame after all my triumphs? But that if I should be thought mad, if I railed as much as they deserve, against these women, I would now rip up from the primitive cuckold all their arch villainies and all their doubles, which are more than a hundred hair thought on. When a man has the fairest and sweetest of all their sex, and as he thinks the noblest, what has he then? And I'll speak modestly, he has a quartern egg that shall shake all his estate to nothing. Never cured, nor never dying. He has a ship to venture his fame and credited, which if he man not with more continual labor than a galley, make her tithe, or either she grows a tumbrel not worth the cloth she wears, or springs more leaks than all the fame of his posterity can ever stop again. I I could rail 20 days out on them hedgehogs, that he that shall touch them has 1,000 thorns run through his fingers. If I were unmarried, I would do anything below repentance, any base dunghill slavery, be a hangman, ere I would be a husband. Oh, the 10,000 ways they have to kill us. Some fall with too much stringing of the fiddles, and those are fools. Some they are not suffered, and those are maudlin lovers. Some, like scorpions, they poison with their tails, and those are martyrs. Some die with doing good, those benefactors, and leave them land to leap away. Some are few, and those are rarest, for they are said to kill with kindness and fair usage. But what they are, my catalogue discovers not. Only 'tis thought they are buried in old walls, with their heels upward. Could rail 20 days together now. I'll seek them out, and if I have not reason and very sensible why this was done, I'll go birding yet. Some shall smart for it.
Exit Petruchio. Wow, so the stakes continue to heighten. Mariah has evidently told everyone that Petruchio has plague. She says, I saw the tokens on him. The tokens would be plague sores. His outrage about this is very easily mistaken for raving madness, which is, again, a sign that he might be near death. Wow, Eric.
I would just stage this as someone stuck in isolation for COVID for too long.
Yeah, bit topical. You know, Mariah, she's very, very keen for everyone to leave the house and also take all his stuff with her,
Right.
So that he can be left alone to die. I'm not sure whether the watchmen are there to nail up the door or to take Petruchio to the hospital. Either way, threatening them with a gun evidently works, and they run away without doing either of those things. Elizabeth.
Yeah, just thinking of the final speech of Act 3 that Petruchio has, and how much it did remind me of a Taming of a Shrew, actually. I just thought that this play has very well structured acts. Mm-hmm. They're not episodic. They're self-contained, but the story still links on to the next narrative. And then when we have the sort of the servants talking about the masters, that flows very well into the masters talking and then the women talking. I think that it just has a very nice flow to it up until Act 4 anyway. And it's very well structured. I'm not sure where Fletcher is going to go next with the scenes, because I haven't read the play yet. I'm just going through it cold. But I'm also always interested to see, we're with Moroso this time. We're with Livia again this time. I think I like the way Fletcher has kind of chosen, really well crafted the text.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it does work very well. I can quite see how this would work in an early modern playhouse. I'm guessing Petruchio would be in the discovery chamber with the curtains drawn, so he can thrust an arm out through it and go, "Look at my arm! I don't have any plague sores. Look at it!" And then you can see like the muzzle of a gun coming through the curtains. Something like that. Eric.
Yeah, I was trying to work out that business with the arm. Is that like sort of, I don't have any plague sores, and then they just grab his arm and start checking his pulse? Is that the idea?
I think
because it just seems a bit like, sort of, you can imagine him struggling, kind of trying to get away, like, I'm fine, you crazy people, or whatever.
I think that is it. Rachael Van Allen.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought they were gonna try and leech him or something like that, and maybe that's why he's pulling back.
Ooh, I like the idea of them. Yes, leeches. I like the idea of that you just like put some revolting, slap some leeches on him before he can draw his arm back. Alan.
Yeah, in fact, the doctor explicitly says draw 20 ounces, which is a pint of blood.
Yes. They and Petruchio is clearly not au fait with that idea, even though he seems to be, given the state of temper he's in, an Elizabethan doctor probably would prescribe bleeding for an excess of choler or what have you. I mean, the speech at the end of the scene is as Elizabeth said, it's a bravura speech. If this were an opera, that speech would be Petruchio's big aria. It's almost a mad scene, but what he's doing is railing, and in the game of sympathy, maybe the audience's sympathies are going more towards him at this moment. They were maybe going slightly towards him in the last scene, but this is very much. I don't know, Alexandra. What do you think?
Yeah, as I said, I think the play is intentionally pulling our sympathies towards them, each of them in turn. And Petruchio's previous long speech was also something that made him, I think, much more sympathetic, because he was basically saying, my last marriage was utterly terrible. I didn't have a quiet meal without us calling each other horrible words and treating each other badly. He doesn't present it as she was a horrible person and I was a saint. But it also doesn't seem to be the other way, which is how everyone else is representing that marriage. So, he's had some quite traumatic past experiences, and he has been trying to be nice, to be good. He's respected his wife's boundaries. He's, pulled back on the threats that he's expressed when he's realized that he's becoming choleric. And nevertheless, he's in this situation where at the end of the third act, he is at his lowest. One hopes, or at least he would think so. So, yeah, it's again, there's tragedy in this play, along with all the comedy.
Oh, there absolutely is. Rachael.
Yeah, I was also going to say this has to be a very humiliating for him, as well as I guess endangerment if she's trying to tell them to leave him in that house alone with the food or the whatever. I don't know, it just brought up again, I brought up Murasaki Shikibu yesterday. She had a cousin named Michitsune no Haha, or at least was called that. They don't know her name anymore. Her famous tale of Genji was based on that woman's life in Bad Marriage. And there was a short scene in that woman's diary in which she hears that her husband, who hasn't been home for a year or two, is coming to see her unexpectedly. And she tells everybody to get together and pretend nobody's home and to lock up the house. And then she wrote him a poem right after he left and said, "Everybody knows I was here except you. I just locked the gate on you," and to really irk him. And I just feel like it's the opposite of she's locking him in. There's something about this that's so much just to rile him and to get his goat, and that she knows that he knows it's a lie, or so. I don't know. There's something about it that's so psychological, along with that physical. There's some sort of humiliation element here.
Yeah, there absolutely is. Alexandra.
Just a really small addition to that, the psychological aspect. It's also another time where she reverses what was his plan. He said at the end of the last speech, "I'm going to pretend to be sick. I'll go really close to dropping dead in my pretense to be sick." And then as soon as he does that, she takes it, she runs with it, she pushes it one step further, and she turns it around against him. And this is not the first time.
Yeah, I think you're right to bring that up, that the closing lines of Petruchio's previous scene, I don't know, you could certainly read those lines as saying, well, I'll pretend to be dead and then she'll be sorry, or I'll pretend, or whether it's just, I think that would be a more interesting choice than it being just him expressing frustration, going, I'm gonna die because of this. And Rachael made a really good point earlier that Petruchio is still, everyone knows how he treated his first wife. And I guess part of the test that Mariah is putting him to, whatever the ethics of testing one's spouse may be, part of the test she's putting him to is, are you still an abuser? how does an abuser reform? It's a sort of, in heterosexual culture, it's sort of a trope that you don't have the measure of a man until you've told him no and seen how he responds. So that and yeah, I think Rachael is right to invoke Bluebeard in the chat. Would you care to elaborate a bit before we go on about Bluebeard?
I don't know, just it reminds me of that it's like, because I mean, isn't Bluebeard an abuser? He's killed so many women for walking into a door, or the.
Yes. I mean, the test Bluebeard imposes is, are they going to go through the forbidden door? And if they do, in his mind, he's justified in killing them, or in imprisoning them. So, yeah. Whatever, comedy is partly about extremes and how characters react when put to extremes. So if Petruchio seems to be mistreated here, which arguably he is, but he's also being sort of tested to destruction in a way, where the plays are where the stakes are the destruction of one character or another. That's certainly one way of seeing it anyway. Alexandra.
That is what happens in the other one, in reverse. So this is a reversal of that, being tested to destruction, being pushed to absolute extremes, as basically to see how much abuse this person will take until they break and become obedient to their spouse. So he's in the reverse of that situation, except he's got a gun.
It's true, and in this case, Petruchio breaking would involve him being violent to his spouse. But now there's a gun in play, and even though I'm fairly sure John Fletcher hadn't read Chekhov, we'll see what becomes of the gun. Any more thoughts from the room before we go on to Act 4, Scene 1? Okay, Act 4, Scene 1. Enter Moroso. Remember Moroso, the guy who wanted to marry Livia that she doesn't want? Moroso and Petronius, the father to Livia and Maria.
That I do love her is without all question, and most extremely, dearly, most exactly. And that I would, even now, this present Monday, before all others, maids, wives, women, widows, of what degree or calling, marry her, as certain too. But to be made a whim-wham, a jib-crack, and a gentleman of the first house for all my kindness to her.
How you take it? Thou get a wench, thou get a dozen nightcaps. Wouldst have her come and lick thee like a calf, and blow thy nose and bust thee?
Not so neither.
What wouldst thou have her do?
Do as she should do. Put on a clean smock and to church, and marry, and then to bed a God's name. This is fair play, and keeps the king's peace. Let her leave her bobs, I have had too many of them, and her quillets. She is as nimble that way as an eel, but in the way she ought to me especially, oh, sow of lead, is swifter.
Quote your griefs down.
Give fair quarter. I am old and crazed, and subject to much fumbling. I confess it. Yet something I would have that's warm, to hatch me. But understand me, I would have it so. I buy not more repentance in the bargain than the ware's worth I have. If you allow me, worthy your son-in-law, and your allowance, do it a way of credit. Let me show so, and not be troubled in my visitations, with blows and bitterness, and downright railings, as if we were to couple like two cats, with clawing and loud clamor.
Thou fond man, hast thou forgot the ballad, crabbed age? Can May and January match together, and never a storm between them? Say she abused thee. Put case you do.
Well,
Nay, believe she does.
I do believe she does.
And divilishly, art thou awake the worse?
That's not the matter. I know, being old, 'tis fit I am abused. I know 'tis handsome, and I know moreover I am to love her for't.
Now you come to me.
Nay, more than this, I find too, and find certain, what gold I have, pearl, bracelets, rings, or ouches, or what she can desire, gowns, petticoats, waistcoats, embroidered stockings, scarfs, cauls, feathers, hats, 5-pound garters, muffs, masks, ruffs, and ribands, I am to give her for't.
'Tis right, you are so.
But when I have done all this, and think it duty, is't requisite and other bore my nostrils? Riddle me that.
Go, get you gone, and dream she's thine within these 2 days, for she is so. The boys beside the saddle, get warm broths and feed apace. Think not of worldly business, it cools the blood. Leave off your tricks, they are hateful, and mere forerunners of the ancient measures. Contrive your beard or the top cut, like Vertigo's. It shows you would be wise. And burn your nightcap. It looks like half a winding sheet, and urges from a young wench nothing but cold repentance. You may eat onions, so you'll not be lavish.
I'm glad of that.
They purge the blood and quicken. But after 'em, conceive me, sweep your mouth, and where there wants a tooth, stick in a clove.
Shall I hope once again, say't?
You shall, sir, and you shall have your hope.
Why, there's a match then.
Enter Bianca and Tranio.
You'll not find me wanting. Get you gone. Here's the old man. He'll think you're plotting out something against his new son.
Exit Tranio.
Fare ye well, sir.
Exit Moroso.
And every buck had his doe, and every cuckold about his toe. Oh, what sport we should have then, boys. So what sport we should have then?
This is the spirit that inspires them all.
Give you good evening.
A word with you, sweet lady.
I'm very hasty, sir.
So you were ever.
Well, what's your will?
Was not your skillful hand in this last stratagem? Were not your mischiefs eking the matter on?
In shutting up, is that it?
Yes.
I'll tell you.
Do.
And truly, good old man, I do grieve exceeding much. I fear too much.
I'm sorry for your heaviness. Belike you can repent then?
There you are wide too. Not that the thing was done, conceive me rightly. Does any way molest me?
What then, lady?
But that I was not in it. There's my sorrow. Now you understand me, for I'll tell you, it was so sound a piece and so well carried. And if you mark the way so handsomely of such a height and excellence and art, I have not known a braver, for conceive me when the gross fool her husband would be sick.
Pray stay.
Nay, good your patience, and no sense for it, then stepped your daughter in.
By your appointment.
Would it had on the condition I had but one half smock, I like it so well. And like an excellent cunning woman cured me one madness with another, which was rare, and to our weak beliefs a wonder.
Hang ye, for surely if your husband look not to ye, I know what will.
I humbly thank your worship, and so take my leave.
You have a hand, I hear, too.
I have too, sir.
In my young daughter's business.
You will find there a fitter hand than mine to reach her frets and play down to her.
I shall watch ye.
Do.
And I shall have justice.
Where?
That's all one. I shall be with you at a turn henceforward.
Get you posset too, and so good evening, sir.
I'm going to call a brief break there for discussion, just because there's a lot that's just happened and a lot that's just been implied. So just a quick discussion. Lynn, set us straight. What's just happened?
I have no idea. I'm starting to feel a little sad for Moroso. He seems to be genuinely in love with this young woman, and she cares not for him. And Petronius, I'm a little pissed off at him because he keeps saying it'll be fine, we'll get you two together. Like, where is that coming from? Your daughter hates him. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not very happy with that. But Bianca's sassy. She's sassy.
Oh yeah. I'm kind of intrigued by Petronius telling Moroso to make himself more sexually appealing, to like trim his
that
beard.
nightcap is so unflattering. Like, stop that.
Yeah, and eat fewer onions so you'll smell better, and wash your mouth out after you eat anything smelly, and if you're missing a tooth, maybe just put a clove in. It's like, because that'll fool people. Rachael, did I see a hand?
No, I was gonna say no, I think that Moroso genuinely feels that he's, in love with her, but it's so much of a transaction that's going on that there's a show of wealth there of what he can provide for this man's daughter. And I understand that, I guess for the period and the position in society that she might hold, that she might not be able to hold her own job or her own income, but like just the naming of all the material things, it sounds very much like that's what he's trying to win over her for, and that just the age difference is so very significant.
Yeah, and this is sort of a commedia tradition where the elderly suitor tries to rob the young man of his beloved by bribing her father with his great, or impressing her father with his great riches. And Eric, did I see a hand?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about the next bit, which is just still beyond me a bit, because the whole Bianca Petronius exchange is a bit like he's like, you're responsible for this, and she's going, no, it wasn't me, and then sort of you have a hand, I hear too, and that bit is just so wrong. Yes, I have a hand, I have two, sir, in my young daughter's business. You will find there a fitter hand than mine. And then sort of, I don't know, to reach her frets, it's just, I'm like, okay, enough.
Well,
but it was just, yeah,
we've had this conceit of a woman's body being or a fiddle being metaphorically a woman's body. Anyway, fiddle's also, of course, traditional at weddings, so they make people think of the naughtiness. Alexandra.
Yes, hello. Just on that exchange, because it really exemplifies some of the brilliant writing. This is such a good play in that respect. It's got a couple of, it's got several things going on, right? It's got the bawdy joke. It's also got punning. You have a hand, I hear, too. I have two, sir. TOO versus TWO. Then the hand in my daughter's business and all of that. But also, there's a really interesting thing in this that also happens in other places in the play, where a character starts and finishes a sentence with, in the middle of that, an interpolation that's a little witty thing by a different character that twists either the beginning of the sentence or the entire situation. And this is a great example, because Petronius is trying to say, you have a hand, I hear, too, in my daughter's business. You've also been involved in the thing that my young daughter is doing. But because we get that in the middle and then we get her response, that completely upturns what we understand is being said. What we understand of what is being said. So the fact that it's working on several levels is just so clever and so tightly written. There's so much, what's the word? Not material, I guess, in very little text.
I'm intrigued by that too, and I think you're absolutely right to point out that wonderful multiple shared line between two speakers.
Yes.
Yes, I'll tell you, do, and truly, because shared lines shared lines can be violent and argumentative, but they're also intimate. If you share a line with someone, you're closer to them than you were if you were both end stopped. So there's some sort of bogey and Bacall chemistry going on here. I think. Eric.
Well, also it's kind of like, ping pong when they get, I don't know if you've ever seen like sort of when they get really intense, or tennis, depending on, tennis would be much better, I don't know, approximation. Like, it starts with like, I don't know, slow shots, and then as it gets faster, or like, the other person wants to win the point, it's kind of like, you have to sort of get closer to the net, or like put in sneakier shots or whatever. But like it gets the length of the ball going from one side of the court to the other, in terms of time gets shorter, because you get more and more either frustrated or sort of
and let's see, any further thoughts before we go on? Then I'd like to say one, which is that I quite love the way this little Petronius Bianca scene ends. That it ends with sort of the cartoon trope of him shaking his fist and saying, "I'll get you for this, don't think you can get away with this." And Bianca, get you a posset too. Good even, sir. And a posset was like a soft porridgey kind of food that you give to people who are old and toothless. So that's, I love the idea of him getting angrier and angrier, and her being like, oh yeah, bring it.
Brave you. Yeah.
Exeunt, both of them presumably at separate doors. Enter Petruchio. Presumably he escaped from the bedroom they were trying to shut him into. It is Petruchio with the two witty servants, Jaques and Pedro.
And as I told your worship, all the hangings, brass, pewter, plate, even to the very looking glasses.
And that hung for our defense, the armor, and the March beer was going too. Oh, shock. What a sad sight was that.
Even the two roundlets, the two that was our hope of muscadel, better never tongue tripped over. And those two cannons to batter brawn withal at Christmas, sir. Even those two lovely twins, the enemy had almost cut them off clean.
Go trim the house up and put things in order as they were. I shall find time for all this. I find her but constant in any way. I had done my business. Were she a whore directly, or a scold, an unthrift, or a woman made to hate me? I have had my wish, and I knew which way to rein her. But while she shows all these and all their losses, a kind of linsey-woolsey mingled mischief, not to be guessed at, and whether true or borrowed.
Enter Mariah.
Not certain neither. What a hap had I, and what a tiny fortune when fate flung me upon this bear-well. Here she comes. Now, if she have a color, for the fault is a cleanly one upon my conscience, I shall forgive her yet, and find something certain I married for. Her wit, I'll mark her.
Not let his wife come near him in his sickness, not come to comfort him. She that all laws of heaven and nations have ordained his second. She refused, and two old paradoxes, pieces of 5 and 50, without faith, clapped in upon him, has a little pet that all young wives must follow necessary, having their maidenheads.
This is an axiom I'd never heard before.
Or say rebellion, if we durst be so foul, which two fair words, alas, win us from in an hour or an instant. We are so easy, make him so forgetful both of his reason, honesty, and credit, as to deny his wife a visitation. His wife that, though she was a little foolish, loved him. Oh, heaven forgive her for it. Nay, doted, nay, had run mad, had she not married him.
Though I do know this falser than the devil, I cannot choose but love it.
What do I know but those that came to keep him might have killed him? In what a case had I been then? I dare not believe him such a base, debauched companion, that one refusal of a tender maid would make him feign this sickness out of need, and take a keeper to him of 80 to play at billiards, one that mewed content and all her teeth together, not come near him.
This woman would have made a most rare Jesuit. She can prevaricate on anything. There was not to be thought a way to save her in all imagination beside this.
His unkind dealing, which was worst of all, in sending who knows whether all the plate and all the household stuff, had I not crossed it, by a great providence and my friend's assistance, which he will thank me one day for, alas, I could have watched as well as they had served him in any use, better and willinger. The law commands me to do it, love commands me, and my own duty charges me.
Heaven bless me. And now I have said my prayers, I'll go to her. Are you a wife for any man?
For you, sir. If I were worse, I were better. That you are well, at least, that you appear so, I thank heaven. Long may it hold, and that you are here, I am glad too. But that you have abused me wretchedly, and such a way that shames the name of husband, such a malicious, mangy way, so mingled, never looked strangely on me, I dare tell you, with breach of honesty, care, kindness, manners.
Hold it, you kick too fast.
Was I a stranger, or had I vowed perdition to your person? Am I not married to you? Tell me that.
I could not tell you.
Is my presence the stock I come of, which is worshipful? If I should say right worshipful, I lied not. My grandsire was a knight.
Of the Shire?
A soldier, which none of all thy family e'er heard of, but one conductor of thy name, a grazier that ran away with pay. Or am I grown because I have been a little peevish to you, only to try your temper, such a dog leech, I could not be admitted to your presence?
If I endure this, hang me.
And 2 death's heads, 2 hairy groats, that had their faces worn, almost their names away too.
Now hear me, for I will stay no longer.
This you shall. However you shall think to flatter me, for this offense, which no submission can ever meditate for, you'll find it so. Whatever you shall do by intercession, what you can offer, what your land can purchase, what all your friends or family can win, shall be but this, not to forswear your knowledge, but ever to forbear it. Now your will, sir.
Thou art the subtlest woman, I think, living. I'm sure the lewdest. Now be still and mark me. Were I but anyway addicted to the devil, I should now think I had met a playfellow to profit by, and that way the most learned that ever taught to murmur. Tell me thou most poor, paltry, spiteful whore, do you cry? I'll make you roar before I leave.
Your pleasure.
Was it not sin enough, thou fruiterer, full of the fall thou eatest, thou devil's broker, thou seminary of all sedition, thou sword of vengeance, with a thread hung o'er us? Was it not sin enough, and wickedness in full abundance? Was it not vexation at all points, capipe? Nay, I shall pinch you. That's like a rotten rascal to abuse the name of heaven, the tie of marriage, the honor of thy friends, the expectation of all that thought thee virtuous, with rebellion, childish and base rebellion, but continuing after forgiveness too, and worse, your mischief, and against him setting the hope of heaven thereby, and the dear reservation of his honor, nothing above ground could have won to hate thee. Well, go thy ways.
Yes.
You shall hear me out first. What punishment mayest thou deserve? Thou idle thing of nothing, thou pulled primrose that 2 hours after are to weed and withered for this last flourish on. Am I one selected out of all the husbands living to be so ridden by a tit of tenpence? Am I so blind and bedrid? I was mad and had the plague, and no man must come near me. I must be shut up, my substance bezzled, and an old woman watch me.
Well, sir, well, you may well glory in't.
And when it comes to opening, 'tis my plot. I must undo myself forsooth. Dost hear me? If I should beat thee now, as much may be. Dost thou not well deserve it, of thy consciousness? Dost thou not cry, come, beat me?
I defy you. And my last loving tears farewell. The first stroke, the very first you give me, if you dare strike. Try me, and you shall find it so, forever, never to be recalled. I know you love me, mad till you have enjoyed me. I do turn utterly from you, and what man I meet first that has but spirit to deserve a favor, let him bear any shape, the worse the better, shall kill you and enjoy me. What I have said about your foolish sickness, ere you have me as you ere you have me as you would have me, you shall swear is certain and challenge any man that dares deny it. And in all company approve my actions. And so farewell for this time.
Exit, Maria.
Grief go with thee. If there be any witchcrafts, herbs, or potions, saying my prayers backward, fiends or fairies that can again unlove me, I'm made.
Exit, Petruchio. And this, I think, is the first scene we've had between those two characters alone, and what a scene it is. What a scene it is. Thoughts. Lynn, you're muted. Eric.
They basically decide to talk to each other for the first time in the play. I mean, like, about, like, sort of their relationship, and they kind of go, yeah, well, I actually like you, despite what people think. But the way you've behaved has been really, really crap, and the way I've behaved in response to that has also been crap, but that's because you've behaved crap. It's basically who threw the first stone kind of thing. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's such a weird scene to have in the, well, not middle of the play, but act 4 kind of thing. But yeah, it's kind of like we're reaching for a negotiation now, so yeah, yay.
Alexandra.
Yeah, they've been driven to such desperate extremes, they're actually communicating. I think it's interesting putting that in the context of what Liza said before about exaggeration, about comedy being an exaggeration. If we think of this as a representation of a marriage where people went in with different expectations and they each expected to be able to tame the other person, to bring them to their way of thinking and their values and their way of behaving in the world. And they've been butting heads over it ever since. They, reach a point where an excessive abuse has made them finally actually have an argument. And it turns out that actually they each, as you said, they really like each other. And they liked each other right at the beginning of the play. And, were it not for the fact that they have mismatched expectations, things could have gone very well. If we take this as an exaggeration of, what would be a representation of marriage in general, Fletcher's doing a really clever thing. There's a lesson in this play. I also wanted to point out the, again, extraordinary in the context of what we have seen in other plays of this time, rather than necessarily of a representation of the period. The fact that Maria defies the physical threat of violence, and the words that she uses for to do that is struck me as extraordinary.
Yes, it struck me as extraordinary too. I suppose this is also part of the test to see if he is still an abuser, to put herself now in a situation where he could abuse her, where it's just the two of them, presumably on the same level of the stage. So there's nothing preventing them. There's nothing preventing them from touching. There's nothing. Rachael.
Yeah, I was also going to say that goodness, I was going to say it's not just the threat of fidelity, but the way we have all these cuckold jokes in other plays, that there is also that threat of a public humiliation for himself, even if it winds up destroying her in the way that, you know, however he's destroyed his first wife, because I wasn't here for the first session. And then I just was going to say how the comedy servants coming in at the top of this, I think they're really essential, because this, even if this whole play is a comedy, this scene does as a hashing out of their relationship in some way, and sort of bringing it to an ultimatum. That's very kind of heavy, and I think the servants at the top, the clowning there would keep it light enough to allow an audience to be open to the seriousness of this conversation, that it would keep them loose, where this scene becomes very tense.
Yes, absolutely. Eric.
I was going to go off on a different point in terms of the language, because they kind of like Petruchio, when he gets increasingly frustrated, obviously, as he's talking, but you can sort of imagine Fletcher going, yeah, this is going to be fun. I'm going to totally just like mess with the actor here, going all the alliteration, full of the fall thou earest, thou eatest, thou devil's broker, seminary of all seditions, sword of vengeance, and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, getting through that as someone who does not like words that start with F, or I mean, just like sort of struggling with all the sort of, you know, like possessed and possesseth and all that stuff, is just evil.
It's I mean, alliteration does make things a lot of fun to speak, and sometimes even can aid in memorization. There's if I were looking through this text for alliteration, for consonants, I would note the plosives that sound really percussive, as though they were blows that landed. Probably the worst thing he says to her is, "Thou most poor, paltry, spiteful whore," and then which is not a thing that you call your wife. It is not a thing that you call a woman who's part of your life. And then presumably she reacts she gives a sort of vocal reaction, because he says, "Do you cry? I'll make you roar before I leave," which also could be taken as a physical threat. And then you get the wonderful, wonderful series of insults. "Thou fruiterer, full of the fall thou etst." So it's basically Eve damning mankind by eating even more apples. "Thou devil's broker, thou seminary of all sedition, thou sword of vengeance with a thread hung o'er us." And that is, unironically, it's what she is, vengeance. But what satisfies more, revenge or peace? And can these two characters make peace? And like Rachael, we get to the point where he offers her physical violence, and she doesn't. He speaks of it several times. She never heightens the threat of violence, but she always says, you know, "Your pleasure," and then she says, "Yeah, you could hit me, but the very first time you do, it can never be taken back. And I know you love me, but if you strike me, I turn away from you utterly." And the threat of murder and infidelity is kind of secondary to that. That if he does that, you know, if you do, for every wrong she's done him in trying him up to now, and every insult he's heaped upon her, you could apologize, you could make up for it. The instant he hits her, that's a point of no return.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's the line in the sand. But Yeah, I think that's a very modern take. I think that's the point of no return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alexandra, bless you.
Yes, relating to that, actually, I've just had a realization, which is he mentions, I don't know if it's Petruchio who mentions it or someone else suggests it to him, starving her out, striking her, marital rape, all these other things that are all abuses with a physical component. The purpose is psychological, but they all have a physical component. Whereas, and we know that he hasn't done any of them. Whereas the ways in which she is being abusive towards him, none of them have a physical component. She's taking away his things. She's spending his money. She's telling people that he's sick and contagious. She's sort of rebuffing his threats with counter threats. But the things that are actually being done are all things that are just unpleasant, humiliating, irritating, and all these other things. They all have they only have a psychological sort of context, which I realized I find that very interesting, because I think that is why we as a modern audience are maybe not sympathetic, but a bit more understanding of the actions that are actually being taken. Because I think there would be a line in the sand in the opposite direction as well. If she carried out any of her threats that have a physical component, we would not forgive her, and neither would he.
Yeah.
Liza, your mute's on.
I was going to say, Rachael, then Eric, and Elizabeth, do you have a hand raised as well? Yes. Okay. Shall we make it... Elizabeth, you actually haven't spoken in a while, so shall we make it you, Rachael, Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Liza. I just wanted to say the analysis of this speech has been so good. It has been so interesting and so thought-provoking. I wondered if this speech between Maria and Petruchio is like the center point upon which the play hangs, is the climactic moment where they actually are speaking to one another. And there is a form of violence in the way they communicate, because there are a lot of threats made. There is a lot of, there's, Alexandra was saying really beautifully that they need to communicate. And I don't know if they are communicating in this scene. They're talking to each other, but they're venting. They're kind of venting. And it kind of defeats the purpose of them actually being in that room communicating. It's almost like a showcase for how angry they can get and what they can promise to do to one another. So it's just very interesting to think about how we de-escalate from here, because they've all really thrown all of their punches.
It's true. You get the sense that all of the invective Petruchio heaps on her, all of the insults, all of the terms that he's sort of been saving those up and he needs to vent them. But I also think that since they're alone on stage, all of their interactions up till now have been a little bit performed, a little bit for an audience. Sort of declaimed, "Oh, I shall do this to you, since you do that, I shall do this." Anyway, Rachael.
Now, I was gonna say, yesterday I brought up Edith Wharton and how there was sort of that her mother tried to control the psychology of how she thought by not letting her read novels. I wanted to talk about how we were saying the physical threats versus the psychological threats, and how these both, he's acting in a physically threatening way, she's in a psychologically threatening way. And maybe with this play we could have more conversations of gender and how things that are sports or martial arts or things like that, or even military things, that women are kept from these things, and as physicality and strength, the sort of avenues by which to to physically defend yourself, are women discouraged from these things that keeps them in, not saying that violence is the solution in such a situation, because this is obviously not a healthy relationship dynamic that the two of them are taking between each other to assert their needs in a relationship, but that I don't know, some discussion about not just how we are women are presented to us in this era, but how maybe that affects the way that the things that women are allowed to have access to in a safe way, you know, sports or things like that, physical defense.
Yeah, and I think that there's certainly a fascination in some early modern plays about women who take up arms, women who do masculine coded activities. There's The Roaring Girl, there's a couple other plays that I can't mention. There's The Maid's Tragedy. I think The Maid's Tragedy. Is it Philaster or Love Liza Bleeding, where she disguises herself as a servant? And anyway, Eric, we have come a roundabout route, but I call on you at last, Eric.
No, I was just going to mention that also it's interesting how at the beginning of the scene he goes, I'll find something certain that I married her for, and it's her wit. He doesn't pick her looks. He doesn't pick, the way she behaves towards him, but he picks her brain, literally, or metaphorically speaking, which is quite an interesting sort of, like, that's why he fell in love with her. I'm assuming he fell in love. But yeah, it's an interesting point to keep in mind that he tries to reach for that sort of thing before he gets involved in anything else.
Yeah, that and I do like that he married her for her wit, but it's her wit that's also doing this. So if someone witty is what you want, someone witty is what you get. And the last, so it's getting on a bit in time, so let's go for our last scene, Act 4, Scene 2. Bianca, having just snapped Petronius into oblivion, enter Bianca and Tranio.
Mistress, you must do it.
Are the writings ready I told you of?
Yes, they are ready, but to what use I know not.
You're an ass. You must have all things construed.
Yes, and pierced too, or I find little pleasure.
Now you're knavish, go to, fetch Rowland hither presently, your 20-pound lies bleeding else. She's married within these 12 hours if we cross it not, and see the papers of one size.
I have ye.
And for the disposing of them?
If I fail you now, I have found the way, use martial law, and cut my head off with a handsaw.
Well, sir, Petronius and Moroso also sent for. About your business, go.
I'm gone.
Exit Tranio. Enter Livia.
Oh, Livia.
I was not prepared to be in this scene. Who's that?
A friend of yours, Lord. But how you look now, as if you'd lost a carrot.
Oh, Bianca, I am the most undone, unhappy woman.
Be quiet, wench. Thou shalt be done and double done, and all shall split for it. No more these minced passions. They're mangy, and easily of nothing, but a little wind, an apple will do more. Thou fearest Moroso.
Even as I fear the gallows.
Keep thee there still, and you love Roland? Say.
If I say not, I'm sure I lie.
What wouldst thou give that woman in spite of all his anger and thy fear and all thy father's policy that could clap you within those 2 nights quietly into a bed together?
How?
Why, fairly at half sword, man and wife. Now the red blood comes, are married now, the matter's changed.
Bianca, methinks you should not mock me.
Mock a pudding. I speak good, honest English and good meaning.
I should not be ungrateful to that woman.
I know thou wouldst not, but my counsel, and if followed by my counsel, and if thou hast him not, despite of fortune, let me never know a good night more. You must be very sick at the instant.
Well, what follows?
And in that sickness, send for all your friends. Your father, your fever-old Moroso, and Roland shall be there too.
What of these?
Do not twitter yet, of this shall follow, which shall make thy heart leap, and thy lips venture as many kisses the merchants do dollars to the East Indies. You shall know all, but first walk in and practice be sick.
I do believe you, and I am sick.
Do to bed then come, I'll send away your servants, post for your fool and father, and good fortune, as we mean honesty, now strike an upshot.
And exeunt. And thus ends today's exploring session. So we're starting in these last two scenes. We've started to see the two main partnerships moving towards being repaired. That Mariah and Petruchio have aired their grievances and tested their limits, and and if the result isn't peace, the result is at least not more war. And Bianca is... things are starting to look a little bit more hopeful for young Roland. The plot that Tranio, Bianca, and Livia seem to have cooked up will, we hope, come to its due rom-com conclusion. Getting a strong 10 Things I Hate About You vibe. So Eric.
Yeah, it's a bit like a combination of the two of the daughters from what's it called, of the endings from An Englishman for My Money, where you've got like one of the suitors pretends to be sick and dying and gets his land gets his lands written over to so that like the woman he's interested in inherits them, and so he has to marry her in order to sort of for that to happen, and then suddenly he's miraculously cured. But also it kind of seems like they're just very very that bit about the half sword and red blood was kind of basically making me think that she's gonna have them sleep together so that they can't sort of claim that she's a virgin anymore, and consummation of marriage, so on and so forth, which also happened in An Englishman for My Money, but with a different ending. Yes, I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I read the red blood slightly differently. That to be at half sword means to be at close quarters. It's when you have one hand holding the sword and one hand on the blade, and you're holding your opponent's blow away. So that's to be at close quarters. But when she says, now the red blood comes, I think that means Bianca is blushing and saying, ooh, you're thinking about getting, so with the usual martial metaphors, what is it? All swords are dicks, but not all dicks are swords. So I wonder if does anyone have any more thoughts on this past scene, or shall I go around the room for final thoughts? All right, let's do some final thoughts. And thank you all first of all for being here and for giving this section of the play a good reading and a good discussion. And the flying fickle finger of final thought fate lands on Eric.
That was quick. I was just looking up the date of An Englishman for My Money because I don't know what it is. But yeah, just because it has very interesting parallels. But I think it's a lot earlier than this. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll just stop saying things that I don't know anything about. And yeah, it kind of just I want to see what happens next. I know it's sappy and so on and so forth, but I want to see what happens next. Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be here tomorrow anyway, as you know. So yeah, it's interesting what it's doing with that, with like sort of also putting the words of traditionally male masculine coded words, like I don't know, the whole sex jokes things into women's mouths is quite interesting as well. For this time period. I mean, yeah, it kind of. I'm just this play is doing so many things. Anyway, yes. Yeah.
It is. There is so much in this play. You're so right, and it's been really interesting to tease it out and to go over it. Alan, next, final thoughts.
There's some lovely one-liners in it. The trouble I have with this and the Shrew plays is I can't find any character with whom I can have any form of sympathy whatsoever. I think there's also an issue that in some cases we have been making assumptions about the fate of Petruchio's first wife and the relationship with Bianca, which are not explicitly stated in the script of this play. They are extrapolations from knowledge of the plays to which this is a response. But I think we're trying to make whole cloth out of some. We're trying to make whole cloth out of some very, very thin threads.
Alexandra, final thoughts.
Yeah, I both agree and disagree with Ellen. I think there is a lot of cloth in this. I think it's got a lot of material. As I said before, I think Fletcher's is constructing very much or putting very much matter into very little text. And he's constructed these rounded characters and these very tight sort of plot developments, and structurally it's really well put together. I agree that for knowledge of related plays would color our opinion as audiences. As modern audiences, I think that would be both the blessing and the curse if one wanted to put this on. And I think the other element that would make it very a lot to think about and a lot and very complex in terms of decision making, if someone were to put this on now, is that our attitudes have changed as to what is acceptable, even as things to threaten people with, or to casually talk to your friends about. And we have also changed in how what we I guess how high of a threat or of an insult or of a problem we consider certain things with respect to others in terms of the actions that these characters take or threaten. So Alan made a really good point in the chat earlier that we're not looking at Mariah's potential financial abuse as something on a par with the potential for marital rape nowadays, and presumably they wouldn't have at the time. But there are values that have changed, and so we're not looking at this from an equal standpoint. So we would possibly have with very slight adjustments to how the text is put together, you could push this very much in favor of one or in disfavor of another character. And I think that's a dangerous potential to put into the hands of a staging company.
I think Mariah saying she's going to spend his money, because what we see is her coming on stage and giving her servant orders. We don't see the orders actually being fulfilled. We don't see her coming on stage in the gold trimmed embroidered gown that she that she ordered. She's listing those things to see how he'll react. She doesn't actually spend his money. No actual financial abuse occurs.
Right, and it's on a par with the other side of things, which is, things are threatened but never actually done. But my point is, even if it had been done, we as a modern audience would frown upon someone spending the what is essentially the joint account to entirely.
And don't
but
forget,
we
part
would
of that money is hers. Part of that
Sure.
money is her dowry.
Sure. But I say we as a modern audience would frown upon something like that. We would have very strong negative opinions about it, but they would not be the same level of negative opinions as someone beating the spouse. And that's the thing. I don't know how whether there is a tiering aspect to what is going on that not historically in its historical context would have been different to how we are seeing that nowadays.
Well, I think this, something of a tangent, and to me it smacks of it smacks of whataboutery. In any case, the play gives rise to a lot of discussions, and I guess that's the sign of a good play. Let's see. Final thoughts. Alexandra? More.
No, sorry, I was just nodding along. You're right. Whataboutery is exactly what an audience might engage in, or as I say, a production might be able to present unintentionally, as if it is supporting one or another form of abuse, or as if it's tiering them. That was the point I was making. So I'm in agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. And one could argue that the whole trope of testing one's romantic partner in these early modern plays is in itself abusive. It involves hurting other people on purpose to see how they respond. Yeah. Anyway, Rachael, final thoughts.
Oh goodness. They come back to me. They've flown out of my head.
I will come back to you. Lynn, save us.
Okay. I don't feel very salvific at this point, if that's a word. I was just thinking that just the very fact that we seem to feel so compelled to talk about who's the bad guy. Is psychological abuse really not as bad as physical abuse? Just the fact that we're so tempted to sort of hierarchize bad behavior, which behavior is worse, I think is an indication of something kind of problematic, or at least challenging, in producing this play, and it tends to reinforce Alan's reaction of, like, you don't really like anybody. Nobody's really a good person. You're not really, you're on somebody's fault side by default because they're not as bad as the other person. So, yeah, maybe that's comedy. And the fact that we're stopping to talk about it and think about it may be very different from the experience of an audience watching it at pace, but it's kind of something to think about, that we're trying to make things that are really actually quite unhealthy funny, and is that a morally acceptable thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you've just summed up all of a lot of early modern theater, but I think this play in particular does raise a lot of sensitive issues. Yeah, now the thoughts are flying out of my head. Elizabeth, final thoughts?
Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to the debates in the room around the worthiness of those comparisons and the hierarchies of violence or non-violence in relationships. And I think I previously said, and I stick to the thought that I think the play is actually very well constructed. I think it's really beautifully written. I think that it doesn't always help that we stop and start so much with the text, but this is a play that doesn't seem to suffer too much for that. And I think it's also a play that would go quite well at pace. I think a lot of the things that we've dug down into would go over an audience's head, or maybe just pass them by. I think there's a lot of metaphors, a lot of imagery that would not necessarily be picked up on when the play is at a pace. But I think some of the problematic nature of the text stems from the time period, obviously, and is something that we have to kind of think about whether this is just something we have to face with every early modern text we look at. The staging and the casting would make a big difference. And I think what's also very important to remember is that there would have been no women on stage at the time. You know, this would have been all men acting and embodying women and performing women, what they think a woman is like. So that changes the kind of gravitas. As it's going to be a very different scene when you have a woman performing a woman, rather than you might decide to cross-gender the casting or use trans people in the casting, as opposed to the early modern period when it would have been men. This would have been all men or all boys performing as girls and as women. So I think that I'm very excited about tomorrow. I'm still dreading the curse of the fourth session. I think the Fletcher has set us up quite high here, and there doesn't seem a lot of places for him to go. I feel like we need another 3 acts to tie this up properly, and I know we just don't have that much time.
Yeah, I'm interested. You know, if Fletcher is a DM, he's put a lot of miniatures on the table, and I'm interested as how he can wrap up the campaign, you know, can he wrap it up in a satisfying way? I also think Elizabeth makes a really interesting point about gender and the performance of gender and the relevance of gender to this play. That the nature of Jacobean acting companies adds something. Although to your point about transgender actors potentially doing this, is that it's been pointed out by trans scholars of early modern drama that people who would now be trans women would have probably been quite at home on the early modern stage, and that would have been a place where they could potentially find a mode of expression that would be that would be not only socially acceptable within the bounds that theater was socially acceptable, but would also be the making of quite a good career. Then as now, the theater is a place where unconventional things can be expressed, enacted, and lived out. Yeah, as Eric says, some trans people could do both, and most probably have in history, and indeed, yeah, in history and in life and in. Yes, forgive us our sins. This is an interesting play for anyone who would. For anyone who would engage in whataboutery and bring up, oh, what about misandry? I would say that in a society where both the law and the church and social norms actively disempower women and actively hand men power over them. That the scale is part of the reason that we've found it such fertile matter for discussion is that our expectations and the framework of our society is different, but also contains the legacy of that history. It's so the if inequality is baked in, then Fletcher is talking about the inequality of his time, and we're talking about the inequalities of ours, which are not the same but are related, I would say. Anyway, I believe that that's probably it for this session. Tune in next session to find out what happens to all of these people whom you may like or dislike, but they are very strongly drawn and very and they've all got a lot of problems to resolve. How will we resolve all these problems? Tune in next session, true believers, to Beyond Shakespeare. And it remains to thank all of our wonderful readers and to say goodbye.